Hello, this is Paul Harris for CGS. Today I'm joined by Jack Lundin, President and CEO of Bluestone Resources, to talk about the Cerro Blanco development in Guatemala. Hi, Jack. How are you?
Great, Paul. How are you doing? Thanks for having me today.
Very well, thank you. Let's start off talking a little bit about Cerro Blanco. You're getting very close to pulling the trigger to start building the gold mine. Whereabouts are you in that process?
Yeah, so we kicked off in around March of this year basic engineering initiatives. And so the feasibility study was released in January of last year, January of 2019. And since then, we've been, advancing with our infill drilling campaign, really gaining confidence on the resource. And on the surface, we're working on basic engineering and performing various trade-off studies to kind of freeze up the flow sheet for the processing facility, firm up the site layout for the surface infrastructure, as well as the offsite infrastructure, so the power line and the access road. So all of that is, moving forward from the technical side. On the social side, obviously, we're still working with the local municipality, the local governments, and the national government of Guatemala to continue educating them and working with them to advance and inform them of where we are in the project phase. And so still towards the end of this year, we'll be looking at finishing our basic engineering efforts and really getting a good start on our detailed engineering. And that will put us in a position to kick off our early works construction phase towards the end of this year or Q1 of next year.
Thank you. Will there actually be a decision point, and when do you think that decision point will happen?
Well, the decision has really been made to continue to advance the project. And so we are, going full steam ahead. We're building out our execution team and acquiring the resources we need in order to advance on all of the working fronts from both the technical and social side of the business. So really towards the end of Q3, early part of Q4, we'll come out with what we're calling a project readiness update. And that will really be the blueprint for us to go into the development phase off of. And so, we're still working towards that date, and we've been able to advance. We're working remotely with the global pandemic that's still very much around. Travel restrictions are still in place. We're not able to kind of travel with our expats down to site, but we are still advancing with desktop initiatives, basic engineering. We have the data accumulated from site over the years that we've been working there. So we're in that sweet spot where we can continue advancing to de-risk the project, and we're very much doing that right now.
Okay. In May, you closed a large financing, a $92 million Canadian dollar bought deal, which was upsized from an original $80 million. Congratulations on that. That obviously gives you the money to get through the various studies you mentioned. Does that also provide the equity component of the $196 million capex for the project?
Yeah, thanks for that. So on May 1st, we were actually able to close the bought deal financing, which in total came out to a 92 million Canadian dollar ticket for us. And that was a large component, almost all of what we're going to be requiring for the equity component of the project financing package. However, as we're going through this phase of basic engineering and detailed engineering, we are looking at re-estimating our capital and operating costs. And from there, towards the end of the year, we'll really understand, okay, that 92 million is definitely getting us into construction. How far into construction we'll be determining over the coming months. And then really we'll understand also as we're driving forward with the debt facility component of the project financing, we'll understand if there is or if there isn't a delta on the other side to that may require another equity tranche. So all of that's being worked through, but that 92 million really gets us into, deep into the early part of the construction phase, which is great for us because we need that to ramp up with our personnel. As we look to freeze the flow sheet of the mineral processing facility, we can be in a position now to place orders on long lead items. And so we've really got some breathing room to continue advancing. So that was a great, great vote of confidence for us to continue advancing with.
Thank you. And for the debt portion, will that just be straight debt, or are you also considering stream or some other kind of combination?
At this point, we're contemplating mainly just a straight debt component for that debt facility package. However, we're keeping our options open because there's a lot of uncertainty in the air. We want to make sure that we're not closing any doors just yet until we've absolutely firmed up our path forward. But right now, what we are contemplating is mainly just an equity and pure debt facility to finance Cerro Blanco.
Okay, the Lundin family has invested in the company significantly and continues to be one of the cornerstone investors. What is the opportunity that the Lundin family sees in the project?
That's right. So, I mean, we've been kind of seed financiers when Cerro Blanco was acquired by Bluestone Resources from Goldcorp back in May 2017. The family put a big injection of financing for that acquisition, and since then we've continued to maintain almost pro rata through the various equity raises since the inception of acquiring Cerro Blanco up until now. And really, what we see is this is a unique asset. I mean, there's a lot of infrastructure already in place. It's a very high grade deposit, and it's going to be generating significant free cash flow, which will allow us to put that money either back in the ground or look for other opportunities. And if we can demonstrate to the Guatemalan government and to the people of Guatemala that we know how to build a mine responsibly and create value for all stakeholders, then I think that there's a very big opportunity for us to continue to grow within the country of Guatemala. And I think that that opportunity right there is what will set us apart from our peers. If we can deliver Cerro Blanco on time, on budget, and in a manner that is acceptable to the government of Guatemala, then it opens up the opportunity to look elsewhere in the country, but also in Central America. So this asset, Cerro Blanco, is really a company starter, and because of its size, it makes us a near-term producer. We're still targeting the second half of 2022 for first gold pour, and if we can deliver on that, then we'll really be in a position to continue to grow the business. And I think that's what the family sees, the potential in Bluestone.
Thank you. You helped build the Fruta del Norte gold project, which is now a producing gold mine for Lundin Gold, another company in the Lundin family or group of companies. What lessons did you learn there that you can bring to help with the build out and development of Cerro Blanco?
Well, I'd probably need all day with you, Paul, to go through all of the lessons learned from Fruta del Norte. But there's many synergies and many parallels that we can draw on between Fruta del Norte and Cerro Blanco. Obviously, there's many differences as well, but also the execution approach and how we built our team and how we engaged with the government and how we focused on the CSR side of the business as well as our training. All of that worked out very well for Lundin Gold and the Fruta del Norte build, and the relationships we built with the project team is very strong. And so we're looking at continuing and drawing on that's the successful side of things, and really putting that kind of template together and modifying it for Cerro Blanco. Of course, not everything went perfect, and we've got a long list of things that we want to improve on for the next project, and that next project being Cerro Blanco. And so I think that the timing is really good because Fruta del Norte and the experiences that we had there are very fresh in the mind. And so we can look at what went well and what didn't, and really kind of refine that execution process and apply it to Cerro Blanco. So all in all, I think it just makes perfect sense for us to be, pivoting and putting a lot of attention on the project side for Cerro Blanco. I will say, obviously, the focus for the Lundin Group. I mean, Lundin Gold is still the flagship company within the Lundin Group. Fruta del Norte is a bigger project, and it's in operations. So now they're ramping up and focusing on the operations. But now a different phase and a different project, Cerro Blanco, is coming up the pipeline. And so it's very exciting to try and bring that up to the standard of Fruta del Norte. And that's really what we're trying to do.
Well, that's a good benchmark to aim for. One of the first tasks, or one of the first activities that the company did upon taking over the asset was to work on the geological model, and you sort of came up with a different geological model to what Goldcorp had. And you mentioned a moment ago you're continuing with infill drilling. So how is the sort of geological model developing? What is that telling you? What are the sort of upside potential of the Cerro Blanco deposit?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I mean, really, what we did when we acquired the project is we looked at all of the data that was accumulated or had been gathered through drilling and through the early development that had been executed by Goldcorp, and really we understood that there is a lot of data available. However, the nature of these deposits, low sulfidation, epithermal, the gold is locked up in quartz veins. Understanding the orientation, the geometry of the ore body is very, very important. It's critical to achieving a successful mine development and designing a mine around. And so we've really just looked at gaining resource confidence, and really looked at infill drilling and understanding the deposit further. So we've put a big focus on our exploration and our resource geological team to understand how this deposit formed and really where those veins are going. And through that infill drilling campaign, we've identified new veins that can potentially make it into the mine plan at a later date. And therefore, as you continue to gain confidence in the resource, you're also looking that it extends, right? It extends laterally, and extends slightly at depth. And so I think, there's a good amount of resources to put into the ground to really understand the deposit further, to build that mine around. And as you do that, you're gaining more confidence on how to build your mine plan around, but you're also discovering that this deposit has more to give than what's identified in the feasibility study. And so that's also very exciting because it gives promise to us, and we believe that we can extend that mine life, and we'll really understand more once we're deeper down in the deposit and we start production mining, and we understand how the rock reacts to our stoping and to our cut and fill mining methods. But really, I think we'll be able to see that this deposit has more to give than the 8-year initial mine life that is stated in the feasibility study.
Okay, and that's 8 years. That's at an average production rate of was it 113,000 gold ounces a year?
Approximately, yeah. So it's a plateau of the first 3 years. We're almost at 150,000 ounces before it drops off. 150,000 ounces of gold produced per year. So we'll be looking, as we're kind of optimizing and updating our mine plan and getting the detailed engineering of the underground. We'll be looking at kind of two things: increasing that plateau, longer than 3 years, but also extending that mine life beyond 8 years. And I think we can do that with the resources we have and the data that's available for us, and access to more drilling. And the focus is, the board is very focused on management, really spending the time to drill out the resource further, and so we're doing that.
Okay. The Cerro Blanco deposit also has sort of geothermal possibilities, and previously that was being considered as a potential energy source for the project. What's happening with that element?
That's right. So adjacent to the Cerro Blanco property, we have what's called the Mita Geothermal Project, which is actually a fully licensed geothermal power project. And there was about 60 million US dollars sunk into this by Goldcorp when they were the operator of this area. And that was really due to the fact that access to a substation to provide power to Cerro Blanco from the grid was not readily available. Since then, there's been a new substation put in about 6 to 7 kilometers away from the project. And so for us, the priority right now is, let's develop Cerro Blanco. We know we can tie into the grid, and energy is quite cheap, around 6 to 7 cents per kilowatt hour. And so once we're up and running, we can really look at leveraging off of the Mita geothermal project. There's potential there to generate a significant amount of electricity based on renewable energy. And the options there could be to provide power to the mine, but also to sell into the grid. And so we're assessing that. Really, though, the focus now is, because we've got a lot of technical work to do, and all of the resources we want to focus on getting into the development phase for Cerro Blanco are there. The Mita geothermal remains an opportunity for us.
Okay, so Mita's taken a little bit of a backseat for the time being. You talked a moment ago about the sort of perhaps the future growth possibilities of the company once the mine's in production. In terms of M&A activity, the vogue seems to be on creating Latin American-focused precious metals companies. Is one of the aims once Cerro Blanco is up and running, is one of the aims perhaps to sort of merge the Lundin companies, you guys merging with Bluestone, or are you going to go very separate routes?
I mean, it's hard to predict what can happen. There's lots of options and lots of opportunities to create value and maximize value of all of the companies. However, right now we're not too focused on what may happen in the future. It's really the focus for us is on this kind of immediate term of getting Cerro Blanco off the ground into the development phase. And as I was mentioning before, I think if we can get this project into the operations phase in a short time responsibly, then we can demonstrate that this could be done again in Guatemala. And so if Bluestone focuses more of its attention on Guatemala and maybe in other countries in Central America or Latin America, then we'll be able to create a vehicle of our own and grow and expand as a standalone company as it is today. And so the focus will be for us to continue growing, not looking for an M&A opportunity unless it presents itself to us. I mean, in the business, you always got to be willing to look and make decisions and see where the opportunities are. However, all of those things will assess as they come towards us. Right now, let's focus on building the project, look what else is out there once we're in production in Guatemala, and perhaps look outside of Guatemala in Central America. But we're still a small single asset company, and so we don't want to kind of be looking around too much at this time because we've got a big task ahead of us.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Jack. I wish you all the best with the development progress of the project, and look forward to catching up with you at some point in the future.
Thank you very much for having me, Paul.